Hello, sugar friends, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I want to talk about consistency is the cheat code. And as always, I always like to start off, encourage my mom audience, my moms who have lost a child. As I always say, after the loss of my son, that path led me to entrepreneurship. So I always talk about a lot about that here as well. I'm certain, I know this is a podcast mainly to encourage moms that have lost a child, but like always, I'm sure everyone will leave with some gems that they can apply to their life. But I always like to start with my moms. I have a special place in my heart for moms who have experienced the loss of a child. So let's get into it. Consistency is the cheat code. And I want to talk about as far as moms, I want to encourage you as you're on your journey of healing, consistent practices will help with that process. For example, journaling. It allows you to track your process. If you journal your healing process and reflect month after month on the previous month, you'll notice the progress that you made. You'll notice that, man, this month, I noticed that I'm dealing with it a little better than I did 2 months ago. This month, I noticed if I maybe go to the spa so many times a week, that really helps me to cope with it better. Or I notice if I take long walks or long baths, it seems to help me, release some of the stress or the pain. It'll kind of give you history if journal the process, like being consistent every day, writing down little stuff that has helped you. It kind of gives you data to better know what to adjust, to what to add, to what to take away. So being consistent in those processes, whatever that is, it really helps you learn how to manage or to deal with your pain along the way. And as I mentioned before, counseling, if you're consistent with counseling, having those hard conversations and keep going when it's tough, when you feel like, oh, it's getting deep and it's getting sticky and it's hurting. And, I'm telling this person I'm getting to know, my counselor, all my deep feelings and, exposing the chance of being judged or whatever. But if you're consistent with that, you'll start to see the results. But a lot of times, in life, if we don't stay consistent with certain stuff, you never see the fruit of the labor because you haven't been consistent with that process. So I think it's always important, like consistency is the cheat code. And a lot of people, like I say, never get those results that they look for because they don't keep going and keep going through the process, even when it seems hard, even when it seems tough, even when it feels painful and you don't feel like doing it. But being consistent is really what helps you get those results that you want. So even when you just got to keep going, when you don't feel it, when you don't think you're getting anywhere, consistency is definitely what helps get the results. I always like to share a verse that kind of aligns with my topic. And the verse I want to share today is, let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. This basically means being consistent. Even when you don't see immediate results, being consistent, whatever, that you're doing to help, like I said, cope with your healing process. Like if that's long baths, crafting. In my case, it was baking. I stayed consistent with that during my healing process. And I noticed, me making celebratory cakes for different events. It was an escape for me. It was a great, outlet for me that helped me. And then taking classes and cake decorating classes. And, when I couldn't get to the in-person ones out of town, I would, take the courses online. So I think, but with consistency helped me so much. It, made me better in my craft. It, gave me so much data that, man, when I do this, it really does help. This really takes me away from escape for a minute. And then I better knew like, okay, well, maybe I can add on this. And if I do a little craft with this and add on that. So I think consistency really helps you track the results of what you're looking for. So I think being consistent in every area during the process, like I said, whatever that is, stick with it, be consistent and see what works for you. And like I said, don't get weary and well doing because it might not get the results that you want right away, but you just have to stay consistent on that path. So many times, like I said, moms and I'd be like, well, did you do this? And yeah, I did it. And then I tried something else, but sometimes you got to stay consistent, maybe with one thing, or I know you have to try different things, but I think you have to be consistent with something and just see like how it works. So I just wanted to encourage you about that. Like just be consistent and figure out what's helping you in that season and what's working for you and what's not. And just don't get weary in well doing. And I'm sure, even though it doesn't seem like it, but you're making more progress than you realize on your healing journey. And I just always want to be here to encourage you. Keep going. Keep going. And also, like always, like I say, for my mom entrepreneurs that's here or entrepreneurs in general, I was looking up different quotes about consistency, and I'm sure you guys have probably heard a lot of them. Consistency is key. Consistency is better than perfection. Consistency transforms average into excellence. And success does not come from what you do occasionally. It comes from what you do consistently. So moms, be consistent on this journey and just don't get weary. Like I said, don't get weary in well doing. So the quote that really stood out with me was success does not come from what you do occasionally. It comes from what you do consistently. So if you have a goal or if you have a dream, be consistent with it. That's the cheat code. People often ask me, how did you build a business from the ground up and now become as a destination shop named in your state? And I always tell them consistency. Being consistent, like I said, provided me data. It helped me see what was working, what wasn't working. It gave me the opportunity to adjust. Not only being consistent helped me improve in what I was doing. So being consistent, I was able to perfect my craft. I was able to learn more because I was consistent. I just did it on a consistent basis. So being consistent, it helped build trust with my customers. When I first opened my shop, my dad ran the register. And, some days, like a couple days on my door, it said I opened at 11. So a couple days I might have opened at 11:03 or 11:05. And my dad would get so upset at me. And I was like, Dad, chill. It's literally like 3 minutes late. It's 5 minutes late. And he was like, what's the hours that you put on your door? And I'll be like 11. He said, that's the time you should open up. That's the hours that you put on your door. He was like, when your customers come, you want to be consistent that they know if you say you open at 11, that you open at 11. So it taught me such a good lesson about business because he was telling me, if I get in my car, take my time to come visit and support someone's shop, and I get there, pull on the door, and they're not there when they say they is, and I got to get back in my car and go home, and I'm not going back. So it taught me like, okay, man, that's so true because, those little habits of not being consistent, it helps, your customers, you don't build that trust that, oh, when I come, they just going to be open because that's what it says. So being consistent just helps really build a lot of trust with your customers, and it helps it holds you accountable. So it makes you feel like you are doing what you said you wasn't going to do, and it just works. So it taught me so many lessons early on in business that, like he said, that's the hours you put on your door. No one told you to put those hours on your door. That's what you put. So you should honor what you said. And it just made me realize, yeah, because if I would have kept that pattern, maybe 3 minutes late, opening late would have led to 5 minutes opening late. Then 5 minutes opening late could have led to an hour, to eventually I might have been, well, this day I think I want to do this. So I'm just going to miss this day, open tomorrow. And those habits could have just led to other stuff. But since I knew that if I said, okay, I'm going to be here at this time, I worked around and I made sure I was prepared and had everything ready. So it was just a good lesson of being consistent. So it has helped me really go after my dreams in a whole different way. Just that little lesson, just learning that so early on. And at the time, I just thought, man, he being so hard on me. Because, he would get, so upset at me. I'm thinking like 3 minutes, Dad, or, 5 minutes. But it made me realize that really all that stuff really makes a difference. And now sometimes I wonder when I see people patterns in their business where they're not consistent, where they might say, well, I'm open or I'm closed this day because of this, something happened, and, different things where it seems like it's always kind of choppy. That does build, take away trust in your customers. And I always wonder, man, I wonder if they'll make it because, those habits can just grow into bigger habits and different things. So I think it's so important in business and in life just to stay consistent. That's how I've been able to reach some of the success I have, and being consistent on days where I didn't feel like I was getting nowhere, or maybe felt like, man, like I was getting weary and well doing. Like I mentioned before, I would watch the business next door. It seemed like they had customers in and out just, regularly. And I wasn't getting the consistent flow as traffic as I wanted, so like I said, I started to get weary and well doing and thinking like, well, man, this, but I remember what my dad said, and I was like, I have to stay consistent. I have to keep going when it seemed like I'm not getting those results. And, I just kept staying consistent, perfecting my talent, perfecting my craft, and putting in the work. And eventually now I'm able to see the results of those efforts of being consistent. So I think it's so important to stay when you don't see it. And another example, I was thinking when me and my husband, we wanted to buy our house a couple years after we got married in a certain neighborhood. And we was working toward being able to purchase it and maybe working on saving enough of a down payment to be able to buy a house in that neighborhood. But what we kept doing, we was consistent at putting ourselves in our aspirational reality. So what would we do? We would ride past that neighborhood 4 or 5 times a week. And there was an empty house that was in that neighborhood, almost like it looked like it could have been a foreclosure or something. And we went to the neighbor that was next door to the house and we was asking him about the house. And it was like, yes, she moved out into, an even nicer neighborhood. And I think she's just trying to figure out what she's going to do with this house. So it's been kind of sitting for like a year. And I think he gave us her phone number. So we ended up calling her and she was like, yeah, I'm considering selling it. I'm just trying to figure out some things and figure out what I want to do with it. And I noticed that her grass looked like it wasn't being kept cut on a regular basis. So I was like, I was wondering if me and my husband, if we could just be in charge of keeping your lawn cut for you, we'll just do it for $10 a week. I know we made something like real ridiculous, like $10 a week. We know that it was worth much more than that. But we wanted to stay in consistent contact with her, thinking that maybe if she did sell it, or maybe if she was going to let it go for a price that, a good deal, that we would be the first people that she would consider. So we was consistent, finding ways to stay in contact with her. So we know we wanted a house in that neighborhood. When we looked around town, we knew we had decided where we wanted a house. So we was consistent in doing things to work toward that. And I know that's probably like an extreme thing. Some people are like, man, cutting someone grass every week for $10. But it did keep us in consistent contact with her. Every week we had to talk, and we developed a relationship. And she was like, well, yeah, I could see your daughter and this, and but sometimes God sees, like I always say, he sees what you working on when he knows what you're waiting on when he sees what you're working on. That's something that my coach always says. So God knew when he blessed us with even a better house in that neighborhood, bigger, better, nicer. And we was able to make an offer right away because soon as it came up on market, since we was consistent in keeping ourselves in our aspirational realities, we seen it when it first went up. So we probably was the first one to make an offer, and that's the house we live in today. So find ways to be consistent in what it is that you dream for, what it is that you want. If you want to heal from a painful loss or a painful situation, be consistent and staying around people who speak in that healing language, not people who saying, oh, woe is me. After this happened, I feel like this or I feel like that. You can always find people, like they say, birds of the feathers flock together, that's looking at it in a sad way, in a way that you feel like, that makes you almost lose hope in your healing process. Or you can, I chose to try to find ladies who was talking the language of, come here, baby, you can get past this. Let me tell you how I got past it. Let me tell you what I did to go through a hard loss, or, what helped me. Or, like I always say, my loss, my pain was losing a child. Your pain could be a divorce, a job, so many things, but it's so many stories that show you when someone was consistent to find their way back, they found their way back, and maybe even in a more powerful way. So I think it's so important to be consistent of your company and the energy that you have around you, and, speaking that language that you want. If you're looking to chase your dreams, podcasts that encourage you to dream big, podcasts that inspire you to be consistent in your goals. And so I think it's just so important to know that consistency is the cheat code. And sometimes we can make it a lot more complicated than what it is. But sometimes you literally see people that's successful or maybe have what you want or whatever, and you think, well, how did they get it? It was consistent. It wasn't that it was given to them. It wasn't that they was consistent. Maybe they spent their time studying or figuring out what it was. I was listening to this lady one time, I think on her podcast, and she was saying, if you want to be successful, I'm going to tell you the tip today. I'm going to tell you the tea. And I was like, oh yeah, she about to give it to, let us know, how. She was like, maybe if you were a bakery and you want to know how one bakery is more successful than the other, or maybe you're whatever it is that you are, how one person can be more successful than the other. And her answer was hard work. Hard work. They was consistent at hard work. So sometimes it's just being consistent, taking that path. Maybe when others are out doing certain things, you're being consistent in learning how to grow and perfect your craft, and learning what works for you in this season on your healing journey. So many things. So I just wanted to encourage you to be consistent. I think sometimes we can, like I said, make things bigger than what they are, when it's really in those little gems of being consistent, doing a little every day that gets those big results. A little every day. Everyone has to start somewhere, and just being consistent on your journey. So I wanted to just encourage you. I know this is short and sweet, but I just want to encourage you. Don't get weary in well doing, for in due season you shall reap if you faint not. So keep going, be consistent, and you'll get the results that you're looking for. So I just wanted to encourage you that whatever you're going after in this season, whether it's a dream, goal, healing, be consistent, and I'm sure you'll get there. Okay, well, that's all for now, sugar friends. Thanks for listening. Until next time, I hope that you have a blessed week and stay consistent.